The cold January air hung heavy over Levittown, Pennsylvania, a quiet suburb where the nights were usually peaceful, where porch lights glowed softly like tiny promises of safety. But on the morning of January 5th, something dark began to stir inside a small, aging house at the end of Birch Lane. Behind those walls lived a man named Mike Moan, a dutiful father, tired but gentle. And living with him was his 32-year-old son, Justin Moan, a man whose mind had slowly begun slipping into a world only he could see. The signs had been there for months. Justin had stopped sleeping. He talked to himself more than he talked to anyone else. He spent hours hunched over his computer, scrolling through extremist forums, scribbling in notebooks, and whispering about enemies watching him from the shadows. His mother, worried and exhausted, had tried to believe he was just stressed, just going through a phase. His father had tried to ground him with patience and advice, but none of them knew how far gone Justin truly was. On January 4th, he walked into a gun store 20 minutes from home. Surveillance footage later showed him pacing the aisles with a strange calm. He picked out a handgun. The clerk asked him routine questions. Justin answered clearly, politely, with an eerie steadiness that fooled everyone in the room. By noon, the purchase was complete. By evening, Justin sat alone on his bed, clutching the gun like it was the key to something he had been waiting for all his life. Minutes turned into hours. Reality twisted deeper inside his mind. He believed a revolution was coming. He believed he had been chosen to lead it. The next morning, just after sunrise, Mike was in the kitchen brewing coffee. The house was quiet, the way it usually was at that hour. He did not hear Justin approaching behind him. He did not hear the click of the gun being raised. He never got the chance to turn around. One shot shattered everything. The quiet home that had stood for decades as a home of peace became a war zone created by one man's delusion. Justin dragged his father's body across the floor, leaving smears of blood behind him. The metallic smell filled the air. Moments later, the unimaginable happened. With the coldest precision, Justin severed his father's head. His hands worked not with panic, but with purpose. Then he grabbed his phone. For 14 minutes, Justin recorded himself holding the severed head of his father. His face was stiff, eyes blazing with something unrecognizable. He spoke to the camera with a disturbing authority, announcing himself as the leader of a militia. He called for revolution. He ranted about enemies and missions and a destiny only he understood. And then he uploaded it to YouTube, to the entire world. Hours later, his mother returned home. She opened the door expecting a quiet afternoon. Instead, she stepped into a nightmare she would never escape. The blood, the body, the absence of the man she loved, and the fact that her son, her own child, was nowhere to be found. Her scream tore through the walls. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with her phone. The 911 operator could barely understand her at first, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. But within minutes, police cars were speeding toward Birch Lane. When the officers arrived, some froze. Even seasoned detectives had to steady themselves. The scene was so brutal, so calculated, that it was clear this was no moment of rage. This was a mission in Justin's mind. Inside Justin's bedroom, investigators found even more. Binders filled with militia plans, notes about overthrowing the government, blueprints of explosives, pages and pages of ramblings about secret agents, coded enemies, and a revolution he believed he was destined to command. Outside, more officers began tracking Justin's movements. His phone pinged more than 100 miles away. That location sent a chill through the investigators. He was near a military base. The chase intensified. Armed officers surrounded the area within an hour. They moved silently among the trees, weapons drawn, knowing Justin was armed and unstable. The cold winter wind whipped through the field as the officers formed a perimeter. Somewhere out there, Justin was waiting, or planning, a sudden movement, a silhouette emerging from behind an old shed. It was him, Justin, wearing a heavy coat, clutching the same handgun he had used to end his father's life. Officers shouted commands. Justin did not drop the weapon. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. His eyes darted between the officers, calculating, twitching, drifting into that world only he lived in. Then he raised the gun. Dozens of weapons locked onto him. A tense breath stretched thin across the field. Shouts filled the air again. But this time, something broke through. Justin hesitated. His hand shook. The gun wavered, and then slowly, reluctantly, he lowered it. Officers rushed in, tackling him to the frozen ground. The moment his wrists were cuffed, the illusion he had constructed around himself collapsed. He muttered nonsense as they led him away. He talked about missions, about being chosen, about enemies that only he could see. But none of that mattered anymore. His reign, his fantasy, his delusion had ended. Investigators spent days unraveling what had been happening inside that house. They traced his online activity. They read his journals, filled with violent fantasies. They reviewed the video he recorded, a video so disturbing that it spread through law enforcement agencies like wildfire. It painted a picture of a man who had spiraled into a world of paranoia until he believed murder was rebellion and violence was purpose. In 2025, the trial began. Courtrooms are built to hold truth, but on those days the truth felt heavier than usual. The prosecution laid out everything: the buying of the gun, the execution of his father, the beheading, the video, the militia plans, the threats, the terrorism. Justin sat in silence, sometimes smiling, sometimes staring blankly at the wall. His mother testified with a broken voice. She said she had lost her husband and her son on the same day. She said she wished she had known how bad things had become. She said she would never forgive the system that allowed her mentally collapsing son to walk into a store and buy a gun like it was nothing. After weeks of testimony, the verdict came down: guilty on all charges. First-degree murder, possession of weapons, terrorism. The courtroom felt frozen as the judge read the final sentence: life in prison, no parole, no second chance. Justin was led away in chains, disappearing into a system that would hold him forever. His mother watched him go through tears she could not contain. She had lost everything, and Justin, he never once looked back at her. Today, the house on Birch Lane still stands, but the windows remain dark. The neighbors rarely speak about what happened. The memory is too sharp, too haunting, a reminder that sometimes the danger does not come from outside. Sometimes it grows quietly inside the walls of home, unseen until it is too late. And somewhere inside a prison cell, Justin Moan lives out the rest of his days. No militia, no revolution, no followers, just silence. The same silence his father woke up to on that cold January morning. The same silence that was shattered by a single gunshot that changed everything forever.